Hi, and welcome to this week's discussion question sort of overview and some of my thoughts on the question. And so today we're going to talk about how we can use social media to enroll participants in a trial. So the discussion question read, you are now the Director of Clinical Operations, and by the way, congratulations, that's a great job to have right out of school, so good for you. But your center has had an 11% reduction in new participants in the last year. And on top of that, there's also people who are successfully screened and enrolled has dropped by 9%. So there's obviously a problem, and this is, I'm sure, has caught the eye of lots of people in the executive suite. So now your board of directors has said, go ahead, we need to start using social media to get participants in to be on the trial. And so the question was, do you agree or do you not agree? And then what's the IRB going to ask you about this? And this is a very good question because the use of social media is increasing in terms of finding participants for trials, but the regulations are non-existent. So this is sort of a newer kind of thing. We don't have a lot of things in terms of like federal regulations to help us. There's nothing in ICH talking about this. And so this is really going to be a sort of thinking on your feet kind of question. There are lots of ethical things that you should be concerned about here. So how are you going to do it, and what's the best way to do it? So the question is, do you agree with this decision? Well, your board of directors has asked you to do something that is clearly not illegal and is clearly not unethical. So you do need to agree with this decision if you want to keep your job. The only time I think that you can really push back on your board of directors if they are asking you to do something that is illegal or morally wrong. And so in this case, we're going to go ahead and start using social media. In this respect, I do think that we could use passive recruitment to be successful. And what passive recruitment is sort of the Venus flytrap, if you will, system where we are going to go on social media, we're going to make people aware of our clinical trials, and we're going to wait for them to come to us. We are not going to reach out to individuals and things like that. The passive recruitment is very similar to having a flyer on a billboard saying in a medical arts building, we have a clinical trial for people with asthma. You don't know who's going to read it, you don't know who's going to see it, and you simply are directing them to come to you if they're interested. The passive recruitment, I think, is the best in terms of this being a very underdeveloped field in terms of regulations and guidances. So doing it sort of in a passive manner is very similar to probably what you're doing in other respects to find participants. The downside to the passive recruitment is that it might not garner you any additional participants any more than putting up a flyer at a bus stop or in a student union. So the passive recruitment, while it is easier, it might also not get you the results you want. The active recruitment is the flip side. This is where we are going to use social media to find participants, and we're going to reach out to them and ask them if they're interested in our trial. There are a lot more questions about active recruitment, such as how do you maintain someone's privacy? So I'll give you an example. I have really two wonderful aunts, both on Facebook, and I would just guess that they probably don't have any privacy settings set up. Probably everybody on the planet can see their posts and things like that. They might not be real keen on having someone say, you have arthritis, would you like to be in our trial? You'd be like, who is that person? So there are lots of people out there using social media that are really unaware how to manage it. And a lot of stuff is public that people probably wouldn't want to have be public. So if you're actively using social media to recruit people, you have the potential to invade their privacy unknowingly. So just because they haven't put up any privacy filters doesn't mean that they don't want to be private. Social media is new for a lot of people, and generationally, how those social media accounts are handled can vary quite a bit. So active recruitment has the ability to sort of infringe on privacy unintentionally. So I do think that it is potentially much more difficult, and your IRB is going to have a lot more questions for you. It also is going to require time that your site might not have to use to actively recruit. So it's something you have to think about as well. So what are some things IRB is going to ask? My answers are going to sort of vary here, but these are the things that you will have to think about. Which social media sites will be used? I don't know, maybe just Facebook, maybe Instagram. You know, this is sort of going to vary. But the IRB is going to want to know where you're going to be. Are you going to actually be using apps to find participants? And this sort of gets to be problematic. This would be an active recruitment method. So you could use a dating app to find people that fit a profile. There are questions about that because people who use dating apps are looking for dates. They aren't looking to be enrolled in clinical trials. And so that can be very, very sensitive kind of thing. So the IRB is going to want to know, how are you going to do this? Where are you going to go and find your participants? And then the question will be, will recruitment be passive and or active? I'm really voting at this point for passive. I think initially, even if my board of directors wants me to be active, I think that I would say to them, we are going to start off in a passive mode, to sort of get our feet underneath us, to consider all of the factors that we have to sort of think about, and what if we decide to just sort of go ahead and move into an active recruitment strategy. The question then for the IRB, if it's active, how will potential participants be identified and approached, and how's their privacy going to be maintained? This is going to be huge for the IRB. It's going to want to know what we're going to do to maintain privacy, and then what other assurances can we give the IRB that recruitment will not involve deception or fabrication of online identities? Again, if I wanted to use a dating app to find participants who are hepatitis C positive, would I have to create an online dating profile? Probably. And would that profile, the account that I create, would it be, this is Heather McCreary, she's a clinical research coordinator and she doesn't want to date anybody. I would have to do that. That is the ethical, correct, honest way to do that. But by doing so, would that also impair my ability to actively find people? How will the trial be represented in recruitment to assure accuracy? The same thing that the IRB is going to ask you about newspaper prints, radio and television ads. That's the same kind of information they're going to want to know from you. If you are going to be a passive user of social media, they're going to say, what kind of information are you putting out there? They want to make sure it's not coercive. How will the proposed recruitment method prevent research team from lurking or creeping social media sites in a way members might be unaware of, right? So back to my example of my wonderful aunts that probably don't have any privacy filters set up on Facebook. You know, they might not really like to know that there are people out there looking at them that aren't their friends and family. So we have to sort of take that in consideration. The IRB is going to ask, how are you going to do this? And it might be that you have a plan that social media sites are only visited at certain frequencies, certain intervals, that kind of thing. The IRB is going to want to know, and have some assurance from you that your recruitment, whether it's active or passive, is not going to involve in any kind of behaviors or contacts with individuals that could embarrass or stigmatize them. And this is going to be very important if we're talking about recruiting for trials for things like people who are HIV positive, for example, or erectile dysfunction, or any other kind of medical or psychological condition that has the ability to be embarrassing. So these are some of the questions the IRB is going to ask you. This is very uncharted territory. Different IRBs will ask different questions because there's no set standard on how this is reviewed. But the IRB does need to know that you are going to be using social media for recruitment, just the same as if you would need to let them know if you were using a radio ad. So bear that in mind if social media comes across your desk, which I'm sure it will eventually. So that's it for now. That was the discussion question this week. And please take a listen to the lecture as well and let me know what questions you have. Thanks so much. Take care.